Hi friends, it's Jennifer. Thanks for stopping by. Today I am going to show you some fun watercolor with markers and adding some shimmer. I did this in a video a couple days ago, but I did it with one color and a few people asked if I could show some examples using multiple colors and getting some blending. So I actually have these three cards I'm going to share today in this one video. So I'm going to kind of squeeze them all in tight into one video, but they all use kind of the same technique, and I'll also show some die cutting tricks along the way. So you can see that shimmer watercolor in Santa here, and also on this cute little reindeer. These are new products from My Favorite Things, and I just think this stamp set is just absolutely adorable. The die sets I'm using are also from My Favorite Things, and they are these stitched stacks dies. So there is a set of squares, rectangles, and ovals, and I'll be using them all today. Let's go ahead and start with the deer card, and this uses the square stacks dies. Went ahead and cut the size square that was perfect to stamp my little images in. And I'm stamping these with Hero Arts black ink because this is a great one to use with watercolor. It's a permanent ink. And I'm just going to stamp my deer here towards the top of the stitch square, and then my sentiment towards the bottom, both with that same black ink. And check out that faux stitching on the edge. It's right up against the edge of the square, which I really like. It maximizes the usable space in the middle. Now for my watercolor with markers, I'm actually going to use my Wink of Stella pen instead of water. The Wink of Stella pen is a great shimmer marker, and I use it a lot in my videos. It is inexpensive, however, when it runs out, you can actually reactivate it for this technique. So this Wink of Stella pen is actually gone. All the liquid is gone from it. However, when you open it up, if you take the bottom off and then pull out this black piece, you'll see that there is still shimmer in there. It's just out of liquid. So what I do is I take my water bottle, sorry I went off screen a little bit there, and I put a few sprays of water. You can also put a few drops of water from the faucet in here, but I put a little bit of water in there, and then shake it up, put it back together and shake it up again, and it reactivates all of that shimmer that's kind of settled into the crevices of the marker, and you can actually extend the life of this. So this works perfect for this technique. So what I do is I mark this one as water, just so I remind myself that I put water in this one, and I use this for my watercoloring. I'm using Tombow markers today. You could also use distress markers if you want to, and I'm applying some of the color to the outside edge of my image, and then I'll use my Wink of Stella to pull the color in, to kind of blend it in. Now you could use a regular Wink of Stella, not one that doesn't have water added into it. I was just showing how you can extend the life of your Wink of Stella even after you think it's empty. It's just a great trick, and this is such a great tool, so you can actually get 2 lives out of your Wink of Stella. Now you could use this with regular watercolor if you wanted to. These markers are just super easy to use. So you can see that as I do this, my Wink of Stella is blending the marker, but also adding an excellent shimmer to it. If you don't have the Wink of Stella, you could use water and maybe put some Perfect Pearl pigment powder in it to give it a little shimmer. Now you'll see I colored all of my reindeer here. I sped it up just to save some time, but I will be repeating this process later in this video with the other images, so you'll get to see some more there, and I'll share some more tips. Now once I'm done and it's dried, I just zap it with a heat gun to dry it. I trace over the black with a black pen just to make it nice and crisp, because sometimes that shimmer kind of hides some of that black line. Okay, so now that we've done our coloring, let's go ahead and add the die cutting around this. I love these die cuts because they really just draw a lot of attention to a very simple card. So here are the square dies that I showed you earlier in the video. I have the smallest one in the center, and that's the one that I used to do my stamping and watercoloring on. I'm going to take that and one slightly larger and die cut a red frame to go around our stamping. So I'm taking these 2 dies and I'm taping them together on top of some red cardstock so they stay still as I run them through my die cut machine. And there we have a cute little red frame with that faux stitching on it, and our little stamped image fits perfectly inside of it. Next, I'm going to take 3 dies that are larger than the ones we just used and cut those from craft cardstock. I'm going to put them all into each other here and tape them in place with 2 big pieces of tape. You'll see why in a moment. But this will cut some frames that will go outside of that red one. I like that these all fit together so nicely, so you can get a great inlay look, which just adds some interest to that stamping. Now the reason I use those 2 big pieces of tape is, look, I have these 3 taped together, and I could do a bunch of die cutting. These all inlaid perfectly if I wanted to. So let's go ahead and quickly put these together. Now the way that I found easiest to do this is to take a piece of scrap cardstock and cover it with lots of adhesive, and I start with the outside and work my way in. And I'm going to do this right up against the edge of up against a corner of this cardstock, so that I only have to trim off the excess from 2 sides. Now you could go ahead and do this directly onto the center of your card if you want to, but I'm going to actually pop all this up. So I wanted like a backing to this, which you'll see in a moment. So now I'm going to put my last piece right in the center. You can see how they all fit together perfectly. And I love all that faux stitching in there. And now I can just use my scissors to trim away the excess from the two sides. Now I'm going to go ahead and put some foam tape behind this so that it pops up, and add this to the center of a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 white note card. Now after I put this down, I decided I didn't really like the white in the background. So as I do quite often, I tore it apart and changed my mind here. And I'm going to take it and stick it onto a craft note card. And I just like that much better because I feel like the focus stays in the center where we did all that watercoloring. So you don't ever be afraid to kind of change things up. You can often tear things up and move it around and nobody will ever know. Okay, so there is our first card. Now next I wanted to go to the card that I actually think is the most fun, and it's this dancing Santa here. I actually did a little trick on here so that Santa actually dances when you get him out of the envelope. And I also did some inlaying of die cuts in the background in the same watercolor technique. Let's go ahead and plan out where we're going to put everything here. I'm going to use the rectangle stitch dies here to kind of do like an off-center frame around our sentiment, and then have Santa kind of sitting up on top of it. So I'm just kind of planning out what I'm going to do here. And then I'm going to take some tape and put two big pieces over them to hold them together. That way I can again take them all off and do several cards if I wanted to at once. Now I'm going to run this through my die cut machine. You can use any die cut machine with these. And if I peel the paper away carefully, I can take that same tape and leave it there and have these inset perfectly to do many cards at once. The tape that I'm using is micropore medical tape, but you could use washi tape or painter's tape if you want to. So now I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment on the bottom of this piece. I'm using my favorite black ink once again, and just doing it kind of towards the bottom so that I have room towards the top to put my little Santa. So now for this Santa, let's go ahead and do some more of that watercolor on him. I just love this image. I think he's the cutest little Santa in the world, and I don't usually do many Santa cards, but I love these stamps. So on some watercolor paper here, I'm going to stamp with black ink again. By the way, all of this I'm doing on watercolor paper, but you could do it on regular paper. But I really think watercolor paper works much better, and I like the Tim Holtz watercolor paper. Now when I'm doing these markers, I like to do small areas because I think that the quicker you bring the water to the marker that you put down, the better it kind of blends. If it dries too much, I think it's a little bit trickier to blend. So that's why I do small areas at once. Now, if you're not getting your blending really good, you can take your marker and kind of scribble onto your craft sheet or an acrylic block, and then pick some of that color up with your Wink of Stella or your water brush and bring that to your card. So that's what you see me doing off to the side there. It's a great blending trick. Now, in between, I recommend heat setting it so you don't smear anything that you've done. And actually, I heat set that and I came in with a darker red to add some kind of shading to it. Now for his face, I'm actually using a light brown, but very little of it. So I scribble it off onto the side and then pick up a little bit of that brown with my brush here and add it to the paper. If I took the brown right to the paper, he might be a little bit too dark. And I'm doing the same with a little bit of pink for his cheeks. Now for the black belt, I decided I wanted that to be nice and dark black, so I'm just coloring the whole thing with black and then going over it with a Wink of Stella just for the shimmer. You could do shimmer to some parts and then just use white, or just use regular water for the other parts if you want less shimmer. Now for a little shading on his beard, I put some black marker on my craft sheet and just picked a little bit of it up with my Wink of Stella and blended it in. Again, you don't have to use the Wink of Stella. You could use just water and a brush for this, or you can use a water brush, but I love the shimmer that you get with this. Now once he's all dry, which I did with my heat gun, because I don't really think you need to let it sit like you do with watercolor, you can just dry it with your heat gun. I'm going through and tracing it with my black pen once again so I get a really nice dark edge. I decided to go ahead and fussy cut him out by cutting right up against the edge of the image. However, you could get the dies that go with this stamp set and it leaves like a little white trimmer on the edge, but I'm one of those crazy people who likes to cut right up against the edge of the image. I just like the look of that, and I also don't mind the fussy cutting. I think with a good pair of scissors like these Fisker ones, it can be kind of therapeutic. Now let's go ahead and put this card together. I'm covering a piece of white cardstock with some adhesive so that I can arrange all my die cut pieces together in like a puzzle. So I'm putting again the outside piece down first, and then I will work my way into the smaller piece. Now you could just keep this very simple and not do all this die cutting in the background, but I think this die cut frame really pulls attention to your sentiment and the image that we're going to have kind of situated on top of it. Now for that little Santa, I was just going to foam dot him on top of all this, but I thought it'd be fun to add something a little more exciting. So I'm going to use a tool called an action wobbler. These are really inexpensive and they're little springs that are meant for card making. So here's what the action wobbler looks like, or action wobble looks like. It has two flat sides with a spring in between, and it flattens nicely when you put it in an envelope, so it's not bulky at all. But then when you take it out, it pops up and kind of wobbles around. Now it's a little bit big, so what I like to do is trim off just enough so that you can hide it behind your little image. So I need to trim this a little bit smaller so that it fits behind our little Santa here. So I'm kind of trimming all around. I'll put some extra adhesive on this to make sure it still sticks though. So after I've trimmed enough off the sides, I'm going to go ahead and check and make sure it's perfect for the size there. It looks like it is. I'm going to go ahead and take the release paper off one side and glue that to the back of our little Santa here. So you can see that great spring in there, and that spring just flattens right down, very flat for the mail. So now I've got that great spring in there. I'll take the release paper off the other side, and this will stick onto the card. Now to be sure that it really stays put on this side, since I cut so much of that adhesive away, I'm going to put on a little bit of my favorite strong adhesive, which is multi-medium from Ranger. I'm just putting a tiny little bit here and there on this. You really don't need a whole lot because it should stick just fine. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this on my card, and there you can see it kind of pops up really nice. Now I'm going to put something heavy on this just so it dries, but when we come back to it, you'll see that it has this fun little wobbling action to it. I also decided to add some little presents next to him. He looked a little lonely there without anything else. I decided once again to cut this out and glue it onto the card, but you could have stamped this directly on the card and done your watercoloring right there on the card. So I did a little bit of blending here. Now for the gold ribbon, I decided not to do any blending, just go ahead and color it in and put some Wink of Stella on it for the shimmer. So after I cut him out, I'm just going to stick him right there with some foam dot tape, and there you can see I have a little dimension behind the presents, but that little Santa, man, he just wobbles and dances around. I just think that's so fun and playful and perfect for the feel of this little Santa. I think he's so cute. And again, that little spring kind of folds inside of itself and ends up being very flat when you put it through the mail. Okay, so now the last card, I'm just going to show you really quickly because a lot of it's the same as what I've done on these other cards, but I love these little Santas, and the sentiments on these are great for all winter season. You don't have to just use them for your Christmas cards or your holiday cards. I just thought this would be a fun one to send kind of as a thank you. So I've actually put the sentiment, it's a straight sentiment, but I put it at an arch on my acrylic block so that it follows the arch of this oval die cut that I created. This oval die cut is from one of those Stitch Stacks die sets that I showed you at the beginning of the video. So I'm just going to stamp that along the curve and then stamp my Santa again with the black ink and go ahead and color them in just like I did on the Santa that I showed you earlier. Now once I was done, I put it inside of a red piece that I die cut with the exact same die. So we're just putting these inside of each other. I'm just putting some tape on the back to tape the white inside of the red. This is a little bit different instead of gluing it onto another piece. I wasn't real sure if I wanted to pop this up or just glue it flat. So I just did the tape first. It was quick and easy. Decided I wanted to glue this down flat, so I just put some adhesive on it and glue it right onto the center of a white note card. Very quick and easy to do. I had all the supplies out, so I thought I might as well go ahead and do a third card. So there you have it, how you can use markers with your Wink of Stella for some shimmer watercolor, and also how you can extend the life of your Wink of Stella by adding a little bit of water. I also use die cuts to kind of draw attention in very subtly, but draw attention into your stamping. Now all these products are from My Favorite Things, and it's part of one of their newest releases, and there are a lot of great products in this release. So I've also created a video showing you a close look at those products, so you can click here or in the YouTube description below to see that video. Also, if you're interested in the products I use, they're listed in my YouTube description, or you can just go over to my blog at jennifermcguireinc.com, where I'll have much more information and lots of photos of these cards that I shared here today. Thanks so much for spending some time with me, and I hope you'll stop back by again soon.